Good afternoon, everybody. So I've been asked by various people, what do I think about the new iPhones that came out, the iPhone 11, the 11 Pro, and the 11 Pro Max. And so the ordering was 10 p.m. last night. So I did get my order in, and I had some errors, but I did get my order in. And what do I think of it? So I don't know how far in this video everyone's going to get. So I'll start with the main reason for those who let's say you really love the Apple ecosystem and you think you can't have anything other than an iPhone, and you're coming from a 7 Plus, a 8 Plus, a 10, or even a 10S. Now, or actually, the 7 Plus doesn't have this feature. So the first thing I'll say is portrait mode. Portrait mode, I know my cousins love it. I hear a lot of people like portrait mode. I personally don't use it as that much. One, because I used to be really into taking photos of food. Now I just take Snapchats and stuff, so I don't really post about food as much as I did. Now, the main thing about portrait mode is how it works is, or how it did work, and it does work in the 10R, which I'm not really sure how it works. I think it does it like a Pixel 4, which is using more software driven than hardware blended with software. But it takes two photos, and then it knows the difference between the two photos by not by depth of field, by where they sit, and then it blurs the background. And portrait mode's a bit smarter now, so it knows more object rather than just facial recognition. So it was saying how you can use portrait mode on your pets. But here's the thing about portrait mode. I got this in front of this is a stopwatch. If you see people sitting at a cafe and they're trying to take a really cool, so you see those very trendy people at a like a hipstery cafe, and you have your food object, which is here, and you see them, they don't take a photo like this, they take a photo like this. The reason why is portrait mode is telling them that the camera's not far away enough. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The iPhone 11, which is different to the 10S and the 10, is it doesn't have a telephoto lens. But it has two cameras. It has the normal camera that it has on every other phone, which they call the wide, but then they have a new one called the ultra wide. So what that means is your portrait mode photo is probably going to use the wide camera as the normal camera, which has optical image stabilization, and it's going to use the wide one as the background. So you're taking a photo from a normal length, but then getting the portrait mode. And for people who, how do I say this, do a lot of food photography, but don't actually use a full-on camera, not that hardcore, I think that feature is pretty useful. And I think a lot of people don't really care for the fact that about an OLED screen opposed to an LCD screen, which there's some funny posts from Telstra, they don't even know the difference. But if you sell your 10S secondhand for about $1,000, and the 11 is about it's about $1,300. It might even be a viable upgrade to go from the flagship model before to the cheaper version now, purely for that feature. But even if you're a blogger, like myself more so, I know videos don't upload from Snapchat and everything in not even 1080p, let alone 4K. But being able to shoot in 4K on every single camera, including the front one, holds everything in a high quality. Now, someone's going to say, but where do you store this stuff, Henry? True, I store everything on Google Photos, which I don't pay for. So it downscales to the 1080p, I think 1080p 30 frames. So everything that I shoot in 4K 60 or 3840 by 2160 in 60 frames scales down to 1920 by 1080 in 30 frames. That is true, but recording it at that higher quality lets in, I guess, there's detail that makes it look different, and having that higher quality of camera makes a difference when you're recording that stuff, especially in apps like Instagram and Snapchat for iPhone other than Android users, because the cameras are optimized for those applications. And that's why Snapchat and Instagram usually looks better on an iPhone than it does on an Android phone. Not because the cameras on iPhone are better, that is not what I'm saying, but because the apps are optimized for it, because these companies are willing to do it for iPhone. And I heard that it might be doing for Pixel, but I'm not really sure about that. Anyway, that's what I think of the camera alone. They both have an ultra wide and they both have a wide. Now, what most people don't know, I guess the difference from when they went from iPhone 8 Plus to a 10, which the 8 Plus came out in September that year, and then the 10 came out in like November or something. So it wasn't that much difference. I only had the 8 Plus for like 2 months. The 8 Plus, the telephoto lens, and the 7 Plus as well, does not have OIS, optical image stabilizer. Whereas the 10S and the 10 have optical image stabilizer. But when I switched from a 10 to a 10S, which I didn't really want to do, but when I did, the front-facing camera, which is what I'm recording this video on now, lets in a lot more light, and it is more detailed. Or it's just more detailed overall. I don't know if it necessarily lets in more light or if it's using machine learning and other things to clear up the photo. But that's where the difference would be. So I'm hoping that the 11 Pro uses the wide and ultra wide cameras to do portrait mode, opposed to how it did it on the 10S and the 10 and the 8 Plus, which is using the wide and the telephoto. But just to give everyone an idea of how wide that wide is, I'm pretty sure, I should look it up. I think it's the same width as the Samsung S10 and the Samsung Note 10. I think it's 120 degrees. I could be wrong. I know it's 120 degrees, but I could be wrong about how it is on the thing. So it's very GoPro-y. It's very wide. For people that understand that more from a photography point of view, it is the equivalent of 13 mil on a 35 mil camera. So so that's a full size camera or full frame camera. So I remember back in the day when I had a 60D, which is an APS-C, so crop size sensor. I had a lens called the 10 to 22 mil, and I remember that lens was nicknamed as what was it called? It was called the real estate agent's lens, because when you shot in a 10 to 22 in an APS-C was a 16 mil equivalent. So you can stand in the corner and take a photo. It makes the rooms look a lot bigger than they are. And you're going to see a whole lot of photos emerge now that look like a different frame of reference, because you know it's been shot on an iPhone 11. You can say that, yeah, Samsung's done this first and everyone else, yeah, but everything comes out when iPhones do it. I really believe that. So these are the main things. The one thing that I thought was strange, but it isn't strange when you think about it, but I'm a little bit bummed about it, is they've removed Force Touch. So Force Touch, I didn't know this, but Force Touch wasn't in the 10R, but it was in the 10S. I never had a 10R. Because they came out at the same time. Now the 10S has Force Touch, and what's crazy is Force Touch has been in iPhones since the 6S, I think. And it never really got mainstream that much, because I think it was a feature, it was like a right click, but many iPhone users probably don't even know how to use it. So how did they replace this in the 10R? They used it more like a long press on an Android. But the thing about that that's weird is there is long press and there is a force press, or click and pop or whatever they tried to advertise the one year. But I only use this really for Torch. I use this for I guess saving photos a certain way, opening up Google Maps shortcuts, things like that. So I'm sure they've made a way around it, but I'm interested to see how they've, removed that. But it does come at a bonus. I thought it was because they made it sound like the A13 Bionic is just super energy efficient, and I'm sure it is. But they didn't get that extra 4 hours battery life from the 10S into the 11 Pro by making that more optimized. The 10S has a 29 milliamp hour battery. I think the 11 has something like a 3500 milliamp hour. So it's a huge increment in battery size, and it's slightly heavier as well. And that's how they got that extra battery life. My phone usually lasts till the end of the day. Though that being said, I usually have it charging while I'm driving because I'm always on navigation. But yeah, I would always welcome more battery life, because I do get battery life anxiety. I feel more comfortable with when you're on a night out when your battery is much higher. I think most people would. And we're going to talk about how great Samsung is, but I have a few Samsung friends that I know always carry a power bank. You can rely on them for power banks, actually, because they always have it on them. So I don't know, but maybe it is as great as they say. The other thing that I would love to hear more about, and I was actually really excited about, was there was rumors that Apple was developing something like a tile, and I didn't hear anything about that at all. But there is a new chip. It's not in the 11, it's only in the 11 Pro, and it's called the Apple U1 chip, or ultra wideband frequency. And I think one of the features that someone talked about how it works is you can point your phone at someone and then airdrop that person rather than picking where they are proximity around you. Now, airdrop is always something that I've always said is better on iPhone than it is on any Android, because I don't know Android people that even send videos to each other. And I keep going on about this, but 4K video, it's 60 frames a second, is 400 megabytes a minute, or 4 gigabytes every 10 minutes. Huge. And I want to say that I'm a Windows user. I mean, I have a PC, right? So very difficult to pull videos and this and that sometimes. I don't use a MacBook anymore. But having a U1 chip, I hope to see what U1 chip has done to for Apple, as Apple CarPlay did for the car industry. So what do I mean by that? So many would argue that Android Auto is much better than Apple CarPlay, and I don't disagree. I really do believe Android Auto is better than Apple CarPlay. I also believe Google Home is better than HomePod. I believe Google Assistant is better than Siri. I use more of Google's suite of items. I'm a Google Calendar person. I use Google Docs. I use Google Drive. I use all these things on an iPhone though. But that U1 chip would be very interesting if you had car manufacturers that started implementing something similar to a U1 chip in the actual key fob itself. So you wouldn't have to do this. Why that is interesting is keys are still going to be around unless everyone goes the Tesla way and putting the keys on the phone, but on the actual phone itself, so you don't carry the key. But I don't see many car factories doing that for a while because they just take ages. So the thing is, having the U1 chip as a selling point, I just want to put this out on video, on record, that I believe no one said this yet. So if that chip comes out and becomes a tracker, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Apple. I recently found out that Telstra have these chips out, and everyone that's using the Telstra 24/7 app is what do you call it, a beacon for it. And I think that's fantastic, because I believe maybe there's more people with the Telstra 24/7 app than there is people with the Tile app. And going by Metcalfe's law, the larger the network, the more useful it is. Like I think it's a networking principle. But anyway, that's my opinion on the iPhone 11. I haven't heard anyone else say what I've said about the cameras, in particular portrait mode, and in particular the U1 chip. So for all the videos I've watched, they have not mentioned this. This is why I am bringing this up. My name's Henry Tay. It is the 14th of September, and this is a week before the iPhones are released, or 6 days before they're released. And these are my opinions. And yeah, and if you like these reviews or these opinions, give me a like, or put a comment, or share it, and I'll keep making more of these. Peace out.